push and pull to look right while delivering the aerodynamic efficiency that's so important for driving range. To fit thick battery packs under the passenger floor means pushing up the roofline and compromising proportions to compensate, or settling for a cabin that feels more cramped. On the other hand, traditional 3-box sedans are compromised in the wind tunnel. It's why so many automakers have settled for the tall-tail camback form instead, with a hatchback instead of a trunk lid. Put the two together and it's daunting. With sedans no longer the core of the auto market, it's less surprising why so few automakers have tackled an electric sedan. But Hyundai has threaded the needle and ended up with something jaw-droppingly unique in the Ioniq 6. The Ioniq 6 simultaneously solves the aero issue and treads new design ground, making other sedans look antiquated. Hyundai's early tease of range results might be enough to convince skeptics. The Ioniq 6 will bear a WLTP range rating of up to 382 miles, according to the automaker. Based on how the Ioniq 5 crossover has fared in the EPA cycle, versus the more optimistic European WLTP, that will land it very close to the Model 3 long range's 358 miles. It's a trendsetter, looks even better up close, and from first impressions, it suggests for the first time that there's a car that one-ups the Tesla Model 3 in many respects. One curve, many details. It would have been easy for the Ioniq 6 to mimic the best-selling Tesla Model 3, or to simply aping the Ioniq 5 hatchback that's in ridiculously short supply. But Hyundai didn't opt for either of those routes. Hyundai calls the profile of the Ioniq 6 one curve. Side profile pics tend to show individual arcs, but in person it's easy to figuratively lay a French curve across any portion of the car as a whole. The thing is curvy everywhere. Influences include the stout Scarab and the Phantom Corsair, both from the 1930s, the 1950 Saab 92, and the 1920s aviation aesthetic in this streamliner. Yet to anyone fluent in modern cars, it's impossible not to see some Porsche influences in front and in back. Is that a whale tail? Well, it's a rear spoiler that plays a key role in the 0.21 coefficient of drag, making the Ioniq 6 Hyundai's most aerodynamic production car ever. Modeled after the Supermarine Spitfire British World War II airplane, it's one of those elements of beauty where engineering and design find the sweet spot. Don't try removing the spoiler if you value your highway range. The aero advantages are also made possible by an active air flap at the lower front air intake, letting airflow through and around the front wheels and, by the sound of it, a whole lot of modeling and wind tunnel work. On the outside, Hyundai's so-called parametric pixel design details, the emphasis on lighting, and the slim door handles are about the only things in common with the Ioniq 5. That's how Hyundai likes it, in an Ioniq lineup of models that will each make their own statement, including the boxy Ioniq 7 SUV that's on the way as well. No wasted space. The Ioniq 6 is the first sedan built from the company's EGMP dedicated electric vehicle platform. It's also the first Hyundai model to offer over-the-air firmware updates for the full gamut of vehicle functions. It rides on a 116.1-inch wheelbase and is 191.1 inches long, 74.0 inches wide, and 58.9 inches tall. In overall height, the Ioniq 5 is only about 4 inches taller than the Ioniq 6, but with them both at opposite sides of a garage you'd guess there's more of a difference. Hyundai has conceived each of the Ioniq models separately, with an emphasis on an interior living space, parametric pixel cues peppered throughout to unify the different looks, and sustainability in tech and materials. According to Hyundai Global Design Chief Simon Losby, controlling the visual height of the car was very important. The broad arc that assures passenger space gets where it needs to be, but it starts very low in front and back. Just as with the Ioniq 5, the dash is pushed forward more than in other vehicles, and the entire front floor space feels open and airy. Like the Tesla Model 3, there isn't a lot of wasted space atop the dash, and from an upright driving position the hood pretty much disappears, leaving a great view ahead. Twin 12.3-inch displays stand upright in front of the driver, the one in the middle a touchscreen for infotainment, the one ahead for gauges, but they're by no means in the way. The skateboard platform and long wheelbase pay dividends in passenger space. The floor is flat throughout the cabin, bringing excellent legroom to the back seat, even when the front seat is back all or nearly all the way. Just don't expect a lot of headroom. I, and anyone over 6 feet tall, was pressing my noggin against the headliner, requiring a hunched forward position that would be acceptable for a trip across town but not a road trip. Up front, Hyundai adds a sturdy, two-tiered center console. It doesn't move around like the one in the Ioniq 5, but there's space for larger items below, plus the top area is level and good for a laptop, they say. There is a frunk, but it's essentially a small storage bin, good for charging cables or maybe a laptop bag. The trunk isn't very deep, just enough for grocery bags, although it's wide and long. Not a sports sedan but nicely balanced. Rear-wheel drive single-motor versions of the Ioniq 6 make 225 horsepower and 258 lb-ft of torque, and all-wheel drive dual-motor models make 320 horsepower and 446 lb-ft of torque. Hyundai claims a 0 to 62 miles per hour acceleration time of 7.4 seconds in single-motor form and 5.1 seconds in dual-motor form, although its factory acceleration times are typically conservative. Our well-equipped dual-motor model with 20-inch wheels felt plenty quick in this world of instant torque, and the motors and traction system never needed the Pirelli P0s to scramble for grip. What would this vehicle be like with a firmer suspension and the higher output 576 horsepower dual-motor layout of the Kia EV6? While exact horsepower figures are still TBA, that vehicle is in the works as the Ioniq 6N. It's one to look forward to, given the Ioniq 6's lower, more planted feel.